The latest news on Chris Godwin and his future with the Buccaneers, that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. For that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We've got some interesting comments from Tristan Wirfs regarding one of his fellow offensive linemen, and it's a mock draft Monday. We are going to take a look at a 2-round mock draft from fellow Locked On host Kyle Krabs. That's all coming up in a little bit, but let's start with the latest surrounding Chris Godwin and his potential future with the Buccaneers. So I have been extremely vocal about my belief that Chris Godwin returns to the Buccaneers next season and beyond, and how it makes a ton of sense for both sides from an on-field standpoint as well as off the field from a business aspect. But one of the other things that I have mentioned in the past is that I would not have been surprised to see the Buccaneers use their franchise tag on him just to ensure they get the exclusive negotiating rights like they did with Antoine Winfield Jr. last year, like they did with Chris Godwin once before. However, that will not be happening. That is according to ESPN's Jenna, Laine. So ESPN dropped an article about every team's possible use of the franchise tag. And for the Bucs, Laine said, quote, "While sources told ESPN that the Bucs very much want receiver Chris Godwin back and will do what it takes to make this happen, it won't be by using the franchise tag. They used the tag as a placeholder the last time Godwin was a free agent in 2022, and they used it on him in 2021. So this would be his third time being tagged. Therefore, it would have to be a 144% raise. And I'm told there is no chance of that happening. They'll do what it takes to re-sign him as a free agent," end quote. So obviously there is some risk involved by not using the tag to get that extended negotiating window. If they don't get a deal worked out with him prior to the open negotiating window kicking off March 10th, there will be that chance that Godwin begins receiving calls to bring his talents to other franchises while they offer him a boatload of cash, because now the Cincinnati Bengals are making things that much harder on Tampa. Locked On Bengals host James Rapien broke the news early on Monday that the Bengals plan to use the franchise tag on wide receiver Tee Higgins in hopes of working out a long-term deal with him and not having him play on the tag for the second year in a row. That means Godwin just became the number one receiver on the market. So will he give the Bucs the chance to get a deal done ahead of time, or is he going to dip his toes into the free agency waters to see how much money is going to be thrown his way? I am not going to lie to you. I never lie to you. This makes me slightly less confident that Godwin returns. I'm still around 90%, but this hurts. If the tag is thrown on Higgins, and Godwin knows that he is going to be the best and hottest receiver on the market, it's going to be tough for him to not entertain those calls and hear those offers. Places like Kansas City, Green Bay, Washington, Jacksonville, Baltimore, Buffalo, Las Vegas, they're all going to show interest in signing someone like Godwin to a big deal as either the final piece to help them reach a Super Bowl or one of the starting pieces to build up their franchise in the cases of, say, Jacksonville with Liam Cohen, or Las Vegas, where Tom Brady has a say, and he has already said that Chris Godwin has the best hands of any receiver that he has ever played with in his life. It's going to now take a Herculean effort by Jason Light and Mike Greenberg, not to mention Baker, Bowles, Grizzard, probably Mike Evans, in order to try to keep Godwin from testing those waters and hitting the market. He has to know how close the Bucs are to truly competing. And that's going to play into this decision. He has to know the level of success that he can have as an individual, returning to a very similar offense to last year, as well as how often Baker was getting him the football. Does he want to leave that and go elsewhere? Only Godwin knows the answer, and it's going to be a very long few weeks until he shares that essentially with the rest of us. So using the franchise tag on Godwin this year would cost the Bucs north of $40 million for one season if they don't get that long-term deal worked out. That's fully guaranteed money, and it's more than every other player on the roster for 2025. Baker's getting $35 million. Wirfs is getting over $31 million. Mike Evans is over $26 million. You're going to lock Godwin in for 1 year on a quarterback salary? That's a risk that you just can't take from a business standpoint. You can't be on the hook for as much money as Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson are about to get in 2025 if you don't work out that long-term deal and get him off of the franchise tag. Then on the flip side, where's the motivation for Godwin to not sign the franchise tag? You're going to be guaranteed $40 million for one season? I mean, no, it's not long-term security. And this is a guy that tore his ACL in 2021. He's coming off of a dislocated ankle and a severe injury this past season, but it's $40 million guaranteed. He could have a season like the one he started to have in 2024 and then cash in on a mega deal next year. He wouldn't be able to sign that tag fast enough. That is ridiculous money for a wide receiver. And I love Chris Godwin. You love Chris Godwin. But $40 million? He's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Jamar Chase. Those guys aren't going to get, $40 million. So this is a tough situation for the Bucs when you factor in the fact that Tee Higgins is going to get franchise tagged. With him off the table, Godwin becomes the number one receiver and number 3 overall free agent according to PFF's top 100. The same goes for the top 100 free agents at Fox Sports. Then Pete Prisco of CBS Sports, he did a top 100 ranking, and Godwin would be the number 2 receiver on his list and number 11 overall. So Godwin is going to break the bank if he hits the market, and that's what's going to be tough for him to decide between. The Mike Evans approach, where this is home and he and his family don't want to leave, so they're willing to leave money on the table. Is that the situation? Or is going somewhere else that may or may not be as close or could potentially be even closer to winning a championship while also getting more money than you could ever possibly fathom, while being the team's unquestioned number 1 receiver in what's likely going to be your last chance to really cash in on a contract? Like, those are the two options that he's weighing right now. We're talking about generational wealth and the possibility to go somewhere like Kansas City, who could have certainly used him against the Eagles in Super Bowl 59, like Buffalo, who does not have a number 1 receiver because as soon as Amari Cooper got traded there, he just disappeared. Baltimore, Zay Flowers had a great season, but is he a number 1? Godwin could go there with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in that defense, and they could contend for a Super Bowl. These are the options that are going to be on the table for him. This is tough. And I'm certainly glad that I don't have to make the decision, because I'm sure it's going to be difficult for Chris and Mariah to decide what is best for them, what's best for their son, what's best for the rest of their family, what's best for, Chris's NFL future. So thanks a lot, Bengals. Now you really have to trade Trey Hendrickson to Tampa in order to make up for this wrench that you've thrown into everything by slapping a tag on Tee Higgins. While it's not official yet, I trust James. He's dialed in. He knows what he's talking about. But by taking Tee Higgins off the market, Chris Godwin's value just skyrocketed. Tristan Wirfs had some interesting comments. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I've missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. The Boston Celtics are the favorites to win the NBA Finals at plus 175, followed by the Oklahoma City Thunder at plus 200, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 900. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's 2 shows every day. You got the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning. Then you can stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. So make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Tristan Wirfs was on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Channing Crowder, and it was an absolute blast to watch. Outside of Tristan's OCD tick, where if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, but for those that haven't seen it yet, after every single question, Tristan was messing with his hat constantly. He was moving it around and sliding it side to side, lifting it up, putting it down every single time. But it really was very entertaining. There was a lot of great stuff in the episode. Again, if you haven't seen it, I recommend you check it out. It's an hour long, but this is an incredible conversation between Tristan Wirfs and 3 former NFL players on it. Tristan talked about being drafted, coming into block for Brady, winning a Super Bowl, the differences between blocking for Tom rather than blocking for Baker, plus the differences in his personal relationships between those 2 quarterbacks. He talks about his upbringing, the influence that his mom had on him, his time at Iowa, and what the wave started to teach him at a young age. For those that don't follow college football and don't know what the wave is, it truly is the best tradition in college football. All of the players and fans at Iowa turn and wave to the children's hospital that overlooks the field between the 3rd and 4th quarters. And then, of course, he was asked about what was a crazier moment, Tom Brady being absolutely hammered during the boat parade or Antonio Brown's striptease departure against the Jets. Now, among all the laughs and all the stories, was an interesting tidbit that goes back to something that Evan and I talked about last week, and that's a pending free agent that the Bucs have that Evan said is gone. Now, I thought the Bucs would bring him back. They probably want to bring him back, but Robert Hainsey is ready to move on from the Buccaneers and explore free agency. Wirfs said on the Pivot that Hainsey is his best friend, but that the team knew this was going to be his last year in Tampa. Wirfs was asked to talk about the moment after the loss to Washington in the wild card round, where he and Hainsey hugged. They shared some tears together, and Wirfs said, quote, "He started the past 2 years, ending up not being the starter. This year, we drafted Graham Barton. He came in, but Hainsey, he took it. It was tough for him at first, but him being a veteran now, teaching Graham the ropes, teaching him the way, and now Hainsey is going to be a free agent. He's going to play somewhere. There's not 31 centers in the league better than him. We talked about it all year. Like, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to be here next year. We give Graham a hard time about it. Like, it's never going to be this good. I thought we had an incredible O-line room. We just give him a hard time. That was kind of the realization that he's leaving. It's over because it's never going to be the same. That's how it is in the NFL. But that was kind of the realization that he's leaving. It's emotional. Like, I love the O-line room we had this year. It was the best I have ever been a part of, and we are so close, end quote. This creates another hole on the roster that the Bucs are going to have to figure out how to fill, whether that's signing another backup, drafting a guy again, or cross-training someone like Elijah Klein or some of the other swing offensive linemen that they have. But the Bucs essentially do not have a backup center now. And there aren't very many veteran centers that are going to be on the market. You have Austin Corbett from Carolina that could be relatively cheap, Dan Feeney from Minnesota, Nick Gates from Philadelphia, Michael Dieter from Washington, but you're looking for a backup. And the majority of the centers that are hitting the market are starting caliber centers. They're going to get starting jobs somewhere. The Bucs already have their starter. They have Graham Barton. He's going to be locked and loaded for the next decade, but you still need someone that can step in just in case something happens to Barton, and the Bucs just don't have that on their roster right now. You would want a veteran. If I'm Jason Light, if I'm Todd Bowles, I am looking for a veteran that can come in and continue to not only help bring Graham Barton along, but that can be a voice in the room that's been around the block a time or two, that can be there with Tristan and then hopefully Ben Bredesen as kind of the leaders of the group, because they are the most experienced. They have been around the longest, and that's not going to be an easy task with this crop of free agents or with all the other money that the Bucs have to spend on upgrading their roster or, bringing back Godwin, trying to keep some of their own free agents while also looking to upgrade edge rusher, looking to upgrade corner and inside linebacker and get more depth in the secondary. You have 25 guys from the Buccaneers that are about to hit free agency. And it really, really stinks that you're going to lose Robert Hainsey. You guys know that I liked him a lot. He was on the show with us during training camp a few years back when David and I were out there for a week. He's a great dude, and he's a good player. He deserves a chance to see the field more than he would in Tampa because of the decision to draft Graham Barton. And again, I'm not faulting the Bucs for that. I'm not faulting Jason Light or Todd Bowles for going out and drafting a center in the first round last year, because as much as I like Robert Hainsey, he had a down year in 2023. He struggled a lot in 2023. He was really solid filling in for Ryan Jensen when he went down in training camp, and he had to start, at center in the blink of an eye, but then he dipped. So I get it. He's going to get picked up by someone. He's going to have a chance to start again, which is what he wants. And I certainly wish him the best of luck. But this puts the Bucs now in a very difficult position to go out and find cheap veteran depth at the center position, or you're going to be in a situation like you were with Robert Hainsey a couple of years ago, where you have to cross-train somebody and then pray that Graham Barton doesn't go down, or that if he does, whoever it is that you have cross-trained can step up and keep the ship afloat and not let Baker Mayfield get absolutely killed. It's a Mock Draft Monday, and we are going to look at a 2-rounder. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And for this one, we're going to show a little love to one of the guys here on the network, Locked On Dolphins host Kyle Krabs. He did a 2-round mock draft for the 33rd team. So Krabs kicks this one off with Cam Ward, the quarterback from Miami, going to the Titans at number 1. Then edge rush phenom Abdul Carter going to the Browns at number 2, probably assuming that they're going to be trading Myles Garrett. So you go from one generational talent to another. And then Krabs has Shedeur Sanders to the Giants at 3, where he's going to be terrible because all the quarterbacks that go to the Giants are terrible. Mason Graham, the Michigan defensive lineman, at number 4 to New England, before rounding out the top 5 with Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter heading to Jacksonville. For the Buccaneers at 19, Krabs went with Alabama linebacker Jihaad Campbell, saying, quote, "This is the pick that I'm selfishly manifesting. I think Todd Bowles would do an incredible job with Campbell's diverse skill set and help turn him into an outstanding weapon in the second level of the Bucs defense. As this team has transitioned away from Devin White and clung on to Levante David these past 2 years, it has become apparent that new blood is needed in the heart of the Bucs defense. Campbell is a long, powerful linebacker capable of playing in space and equally capable of being an impact blitzer," end quote. Campbell finished last season with the Crimson Tide with 114 tackles, 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception. Given how the first round played out, I don't hate this pick. Other guys that went after Campbell that I think would have or should have been in consideration were Michael Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia, Jahdae Barron, the corner from Texas, Nick Scourton, the edge rusher from Texas A&M, and Siobhan Revel, the corner from East Carolina. If it was me, I'm probably going Michael Williams there, but I understand the pick of Campbell. Even if you get one more year out of Levante David, you still have to find that long-term guy there in the middle of the field. Let someone with Campbell's upside learn under Levante for a year before essentially handing him the keys to the car. You're getting probably the second best player at that position at 19 rather than the fourth or fifth, maybe sixth best edge rusher. You know, Krabs had Mike Green go to Carolina at number 8. Then he had Shamar Stewart, the other Texas A&M edge rusher, going to New Orleans at number 9. So you have the number 2 and number 3 edge rushers going to division rivals. That is not ideal. I like this pick overall, but let's move on to the second round, see how else this shakes out. So at 51, Krabs has the Bucs taking Iowa State cornerback Darien Porter. And he says, Tampa Bay loves their long physical corners, and few at this stage offer the upside that Porter does. End quote. Look, Porter can ball. Yeah, it's a really, really, really good pick at number 51. He's 6'4". Yeah, you heard that right. A 6'4" corner that started 63 games in his college career. He finished with 3 interceptions last year. He allowed 18 receptions on 38 targets for a 47.4% completion rate and a 54.7 passer rating against. That's pretty freaking solid. Now, you also have to look at the competition that Iowa State played, the level of quarterbacks that Iowa State played. That's going to factor into this a little bit, but he has so much upside that he should be a guy that raises his level to the level of the competition that he's facing. The biggest issue with Porter coming out is that he's not great with the tackling. A missed tackle percentage of 19.5. So basically 1 out of every 5 tackles he attempts, that dude's getting away. Don't love that. Hopefully it can be fixed. But Porter is PFF's 50th overall ranked prospect in the 2025 draft. He is the 7th ranked corner in this class, and the Bucs are able to snag him at number 51 in this mock draft. He is much better in zone than he is in man coverage, but the size that he has is absolutely insane, and it's very, very disruptive. I love this pick from Krabs. What I don't like, and I made sure to tell Kyle this, is that my guy, my dude, the player that I am pounding the table for, Benjamin Morrison, Krabs had him go 46th to the freaking Atlanta Falcons. So not only would the Bucs not get him, but then they'd have to face him twice a year. I do not care for that at all. And then he also had my other Notre Dame guy, safety Xavier Watts, going the pick before that to the Colts at number 45. Now, see, that I can live with a little bit more, but still, it's frustrating to see 2 guys in the secondary at positions of need for the Buccaneers that I am insanely high on in this draft class come that close to the Bucs and not fall the rest of the way. Overall, I think it was a decent job by Krabs. In a vacuum, I like both of these picks. In reality, if these are the first two players for the Bucs, then they better have done something to address edge rusher before we got to draft weekend. If they didn't get Hendrickson or Garrett, which I'm assuming in Kyle's mind they did not, since they had these first two picks at 19 and 51, or if they didn't sign Sweat or Mack, and then their first two picks are an off-ball linebacker and a corner, they're going to be in big, big trouble when the season starts. As good as those two players are at their respective positions, the number one need is edge rusher. And if you're waiting until the third round before you're taking one and you didn't get one in a trade or you didn't get one in free agency, you are right back to where you were last year, where the team is going to be led in sacks by Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, and Levante David. You can't have it. You got to have the alpha on the edge. I love Yaya. I love the swag that he has. I love how he feels disrespected and he's out to prove himself. But if he's not getting you double-digit sacks, then it's not good enough. Not the way this team is currently constructed. You have to have somebody else on the outside that can get to the quarterback and win those one-on-one battles. No Evan coming up on tomorrow's show. We had to bump our recording together to Wednesday. My son has basketball tryouts for a spring travel team. Keep your fingers crossed for him. I appreciate that so much. But I am going to be back tomorrow with yet another episode. We are going to talk about where the Buccaneers rank among all-time Super Bowl winners. Some pretty interesting stuff there that you are not going to want to miss. In the meantime, please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Make sure that you are following along on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.